Welcome to Complete Edition, the podcast between a PlayStation Trophy Hunter and an Xbox Achievement Hunter. This is episode 23. I'm your host, Compulsive Nerd, and I am joined by my co-host, AJ. How you doing, AJ?
I'm doing well. I've been having a good 2 weeks of playing more Elden Ring mostly, and it just sort of consuming everything over, I'm watching people play Elden Ring, I'm playing Elden Ring, I'm talking to people who are playing Elden Ring. It's so we're probably going to talk about that a lot, but yeah, it's been a good past 2 weeks.
Okay, so I had a really long morning this morning, and things are just really weird. So I went to my parents because they're closer to my work, and they had left town, so I just was going to stay at their house, save money on gas because the economy's kind of fucked right now, especially with gas. But I went down there, and then this was the weekend, and I don't know how it is over in the UK, but like we had spring forward, so time changed an hour forward. Do you have that there?
Yeah, we do.
And there's like talks that it might change and that we might get rid of it, which I hope we do, because it totally fucks everything up. I'm so lost. It's like it would be 11:48 here right now if it was just stayed on that time, but it's not. It's 12:48, and so I feel like I was just so far behind, and I was like late to the show, recording and everything, and I just hate the fucking time change, and so I've been all like in a hurry this morning trying to get here, but that's like how my morning started. But I stayed up so late last night because I went and saw the new Batman movie. So this is kind of new for me because I don't go to the theaters very often. But yeah, I've been to the theater twice because of Uncharted and Batman. And I really like the new Batman. That's a really damn good movie.
Yeah, I watched it as well. I think it was, I don't know, I'd seen going into it that the reviews were somewhat mixed. Like they were mostly positive, but there were like a few that were like less hot on it, and some that were sort of like, oh, it's okay. Like I saw a broad range of opinions on it, and when I saw it, I thought for about the first 2/3 or so, I was like super into it. I was like, this is really great. I like how they've taken like a more, I guess, personal look at the character, and I like the pacing of it and how grounded it was, and the mystery and all of that, all of those aspects to the film. And then the sort of, we won't go into spoilers, but I feel like the last act of the film kind of wasn't as strong. It felt like it maybe went back into more standard superhero-y stuff, if that makes sense for those that have seen it. And it was still good, but it was like for the first 2/3, I was like, this is really different, this is really interesting. I love how measured it is. And then towards the end, it sort of went back into being a bit, I don't know, stereotypical superhero-y stuff in terms of set pieces and things like that. And I thought this is still good, but it would have been really cool if they sort of carried on with how deliberate the film was being up until that point, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like the first 2/3. The last third isn't bad per se. It's just a lot different. But I have to say, Riddler has always been one of my favorites, and I think that it came because of the video game and like how it was set up and how ridiculous it is in the video games. And going around and collecting it, I just am like, oh, I'm obsessed with the visuals of the Riddler, and like you see his question marks, and you're like doing bat vision, and then you see his like you have to have ultraviolet light or whatever to see some of his clues, and it's like everything about the Riddler is super fun, and they did him so good in this movie. Like they made him so dark and like really cool, and I was like enthralled with that the whole time.
I felt from playing the Batman Arkham games as well. I was like, they made the Riddler really great in those games, and sort of interesting and kind of intimidating, but also sort of goofy as well. And I thought from playing that, I was like, oh, you could make like a Saw style movie with the Riddler as a villain and sort of take him seriously, and I think it would work really, really well. And that game definitely inspired me to think about the character in that way. And then this film does such a good job with it as him as like the main antagonist and taken seriously as a character, because obviously in previous Batman films, the Riddler's kind of like a joke villain, and I mean, even the name the Riddler is kind of innately pretty silly. So I understand that perspective as well. But yeah, I thought they did a great job with that, and sort of made him seem like, instead of like a supervillain, he seemed like a just like a serial killer, like a crazy killer going around the streets of Gotham, and they did such a good job with that in the film, definitely.
And they need to continue that. That's what I love so much about some of the Batman characters is like you can have so many variations of all of these characters. You can have the wacky superhero type ones that are just not even realistic at all, but then you can also like ground the hell out of them. And I think for these movies, if they just keep doing that, where like every Batman character is just someone in the city who isn't a super like a Bane's not giant muscular like growing 3 times the size of Batman, but he's like a regular person who is maybe on steroids or something, and it's like you keep it grounded enough to where these are real people. And I think that that's what makes it so fucking scary is like they've been doing this in DC where it's so dark because all of these people are kind of real, you know? Like the Joker movie was super scary because it's just like this
Yeah,
guy who's struggling with mental health and he can't get help, and then it's like you come to this and it's like this guy has been tortured by all these secrets and then can't get them out. And so I mean like
I think it definitely works better with Batman and Batman characters as well, to take that
yeah,
kind of attitude, because I think the problem that like DC has had in terms of the stuff with like the Justice League and Superman and the Suicide Squad, that has been like a mess for the past, I don't know, that they seem to have got it together now finally, like it with like the Snyder cut and James Gunn's version of the Suicide Squad film and all of that stuff. Like they seem to be on track now, but I think the sort of gritty realism stuff kind of doesn't necessarily work for all of DC's properties, because I mean, characters like the Flash and Superman are kind of already
right.
quite exaggerated, right? Like they have to be, because they're so sort of superhuman. Whereas the stuff that goes on with Batman and a lot of the villains there, and the character of Bruce Wayne, it works really well to have a more grounded vision and adaptation of it.
Absolutely. And then on top of that is like what I was saying about the iteration of the characters. So in the games, Riddler is really silly and he's not like a very serious character. Yes, you can say he's a joke, but it's also just a good iteration of how he plays with Batman. And in the movie, it's grounded and it's completely a different character. Like you're not laughing. You're very scared of that character, and it's a good dynamic to be able to be like, "Oh, I like that one better or this one better," because they are so freaking different. They're almost two different characters, but they are just that one idea. And I think that a lot of Batman characters can be that way. So it's really fun to see, like it will be fun to see where they go with different characters, because they don't have to be the one from the comic book and the one from the video game that's the same as the one from the movie. Like they don't all have to be the same. They can all be so freaking different, and it's going to be really fun to watch. But yeah, I mean, I got out of that movie at like 1:30 a.m. and then I drove back to my parents, and I probably got to sleep at like 2:30. And then, like I said, because that time change is just like everything's fucked up. But yeah, I mean, are you ready to get into what we're chasing?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'll start off. I have been playing Stardew Valley on Vita. I'm continuing to play that game. It's just kind of a fun little background game, but it's really gonna take me a long time to platinum that game. I'm not even close. Not even close. And I'm still playing Forbidden West and I'm still not done. I think this is my problem. I'm not fast traveling, and I just saw some YouTubers that I like are finishing it up, and I think that spoiler casts are going to start coming out. So I need to like start to rush or at least fast travel, like try to get the story done, avoid spoilers and things like that. So I'm probably going to start rushing it this week, but I'll still take my time when doing the side stuff. But I want to get like main quest it and get it done. But I've been fucking with the settings on the game because I would just get my ass handed to me over and over and over again. But because I was playing on hard, and I will go into the settings, and there's so many customizable settings. So I would just be like, oh, I still want Aloy to take the hits that she was taking during hard mode, but I want the enemy's health to be less because it's pissing me off that I'm shooting 400 arrows and getting like half health. And I'm like, these battles are taking me way too long. So I'm just going to lower the like enemy health to easy. But when they hit me, I'm still on hard. So it's not like, this, it's a dynamic difficulty that based on what I want to do and how I decide to do it, it's very cool. But they also have this setting where you can turn on. So the game is kind of like a Monster Hunter game where you got to shoot these parts off the robots, and you collect those parts, and then you can do upgrades. And for trophies and things like that, I was really focused on like getting those parts, and it's part of the game, and you really do want to keep this setting off for most of the game, which is what I did. But I'm like, I really want to get these upgrades and then continue because I'm falling so far behind, and I've already put like 45 hours into the game. I don't even know if I'm halfway through. So I'm just kind of, in terms of trophies, I'm literally 52%. So it's like, this is going to be a 90-hour game if I continue the pace I'm going. So I turned on this thing where, and it kind of makes it more realistic, but when you shoot the robots, any parts that I don't knock off stay on the robot, and then I can go loot the robot and get them off. But if I didn't turn that on, it's like you have to knock the parts off in order to obtain them. And I was like, it's going to take me way too long. So I'm going to turn that. I turned it on for just a bit, and then I might turn it off again because I got the upgrades I wanted. And now it's like I can start getting other weapons and then start like making jobs to where I can collect these parts so that I can upgrade other weapons. And I don't need this setting on to get all of the components off of every monster that I fight. But that was something that I've been doing. I've just been fucking with the settings because it's really cool how dynamic I can make the difficulty. And I think that this is something I've talked about for the past couple of weeks. Is like I've been playing these games where they're really nice with the difficulty. Like at points, if it's too much of a grind, I can just lower it. And like when starting, I think with Tales of Arise, you could lower the difficulty, you get less experience, but I could get through fights without grinding for 45 minutes for one fight. So then I would, turn it up when I got to a boss or something, and I would get more experience, but it would still take me a long time. So really fun to dynamically change that stuff. And then I spent a day last week playing MLB on my Vita because baseball is back, kind of. They were on lockout, and baseball had been delayed, and I didn't even know if they were going to be playing. And then all the negotiations and stuff, which I'm not going to talk about because it's sports, but the negotiations went through and baseball is back on. So I was just so excited. And I wish I had more time because I'd be playing MLB The Show 21 on PS5, but I'm not going to play that right now because I just don't think I have the time.
Yeah, the
And
next one comes out soon, right?
yeah, it does. It does come out soon. I think it comes out like April 3rd, like
Yeah.
right before the season, which starts April 7th. So very, very exciting. And I don't know what the trophies look like yet, but I have MLB 21 and I haven't started it. And I bought it because the trophies changed. So they had been like super impossible, like super RNG, 300 hours minimum to get these platinums, and like really, really bad lists, just terrible lists. And I didn't play them every year. I just would kind of stick with one and then get some of these RNG trophies as it was going. It's like you don't really need it every year. But last year they got a really good trophy list, and a lot of people were completing it in like 30 hours. And I'm like, that is a good amount of time to play a baseball game and like get the platinum. That's a really like reasonable list. And I was going to different discords and like asking people, how it is, any advice and stuff. And it seems like it's something that I could do. And so I'm thinking about doing that this year, but I'm very curious to see how like the show 2022 is going to turn out because of the list last year. But I also want to say this. I have been trying to resist getting a Switch because it's coming out on Switch, and MLB on the go would be so freaking cool. I could go to a baseball game and be playing baseball at the stadium, like before the game or whatever. That's so fucking cool. That is like the peak of video games. If you can do that, like that is, you're looking at the roster, you're looking at the like the statistics changes. I could be like flipping through the menus and being like, oh, before the game starts, this guy has this batting average. It's like, you know how fucking cool that is? That is like, that's just, it's crazy technology can do that now. And it's like, the Switch is a perfect thing. I don't have one. Maybe I'll borrow it from a friend, but it's like, I want to see how it will be on Switch because I'm playing MLB 14 on the Vita, and that is so old. It's like no matter what I get on the Switch, it's going to be higher quality than that, you know? But that's all I've been playing really. And I'm really excited for baseball. It's my favorite sport.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about. We might have talked about it at some point, but you said with Stardew. Do you know if you're going to go back and like recomplete that game on because there's a PS Vita release and a PS4, PS5 release, right?
Right. And I actually talked about this before, but it's very complicated because I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna double dip. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do the 200 hours, like 100-hour platinum on Vita and 100-hour platinum on PS5. And I do have two farms, and they both have about 70 hours, which is my problem. Like my problem is they both have this much time. It's all one list. It's Vita, PS4, PS5, one list. So if I earn a trophy on Vita, it's also dinging for my PS5 version.
Oh,
So
okay.
there is no double dip, and I'm like, damn, like
Oh,
it's such a disappointment.
I thought there was. I don't know. Yeah, I'm
No,
I'm I'm losing my mind. Okay.
no, it's
Yeah.
okay.
No.
I totally thought there was too. That's why I double dipped, and I was like, let's go.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, it doesn't have it. So disappointing.
Yeah, I've been playing Elden Ring as I mentioned before. I'm 110 hours in. I'm very very close to the end, and I realize saying the amount of hours I'm in isn't really that useful for the audience or for you because I've personally seen such like a broad variety of completion times for this game just because of how open-ended it is in some ways. I mean, there's definitely like you can kill every boss in the game and go through every area, but most people won't do that. So I've seen people beat this game at like 140 hours. I've seen people beat this game at like 40 hours. Obviously, the speed runs are like 30 minutes, but just in terms of like a normal playthrough, even that range is quite big, and I think that's a strength to the game, honestly, in terms of how much freedom there is for how you can sort of dictate your experience. And in terms of, I don't really want to repeat what I said last time about the game, and my opinion hasn't really changed. Like, the magic of the game hasn't worn off for me. The mid game and end game content is just as good as the stuff early game, if not better. So I'm really happy about that because last time when I finished off, I sort of gave a disclaimer to my thoughts saying that I'm early and things could, fall apart or become less good. But I'm thankful that that isn't the case. And in terms of the platinum, it's surprisingly quite nice. It might be From Software's easiest. It doesn't require any grinding. It doesn't require you to go to New Game Plus. There's a missable boss and two missable weapons. And so if you miss them, then you will need to go to New Game Plus and do like a partial playthrough. So maybe you want, like, for anyone who's interested in going for the platinum or the thousand, maybe look those things up or have like a PowerPix has like a roadmap up. Maybe have something like that just for sort of those specific missables to look at. And in terms of the achievement list, you need three endings, but people found that you can mess around with the saves for the game and get them all in one playthrough, which definitely saves a lot of time. And in terms of the list, it's basically just main story progression, bosses, upgrading your weapon, then legendary ashes, talismans, sorceries, incantations, and armaments. And I thought that collecting all those legendaries would be a bit of a nightmare. Previously in Souls games, they require like every single sorcery, every single pyromancy, every single miracle, and every single unique weapon. But the legendary weapons in this game, or the legendary spells, there's only about 7 of them or 9 of them in each category. So it actually doesn't take very long. And if you've already cleared out a lot of the areas and found a lot of the fast travel points, because you can fast travel to any Shrine of Grace in the game, if you found all of those and already explored the map, it's actually quite quick to just go and get stuff. And I found that I've not really had to do backtracking at all because of the way I've been playing. In terms of I've been trying to be mostly blind through the game, and I've had to look some stuff up. There's some locations with like puzzles and some like awkward stuff where you're like, I don't know where this NPC is gone. Like I've talked to them and I don't know where they are now, and I don't know how to progress their thing. So there's some stuff I've had to look up. But other than that, I've been trying to have like a blind playthrough experience for the most part, just because this game's quite special to me, and part of what makes it special is the discovery and the exploration, and you only get chance for like a first blind playthrough, one time. You can't replicate the first experience you have with a game like this. So it's been good to play it that way, and I've been trying to explore everything I can. So I'm at 110 hours, as I said, but you could probably, if you went to just got up a guide and you went to just go for the platinum, to do basically everything that's required for the platinum, you could probably do it in about 40 to 60 hours. So for me, there's a lot of other stuff outside of the platinum to do in the game, which I really like, in terms of giving you optional stuff to do, but the platinum not requiring you to do like absolutely everything and to not miss anything and to progress everything perfectly with different quest lines and NPCs and stuff, because there's no quest log and there's no journal or anything. So keeping track of stuff to that level where you sort of get perfection is really, really hard to do. And there's definitely some stuff that I've messed up even while I'm trying to be as meticulous as possible and slow as possible. So it's really good that they don't expect perfection in that way. So the list is quite nice.
Yeah, that's actually really good to hear. And, talking about the completion time, I've been seeing some people in the LSM Discord that we're in the trophy chat. They've been posting their platinums and their playtimes, and it's like people are posting like 50 hours,
Yeah,
55 hours. And it's like that's not very long compared to maybe other Souls games, I feel like.
yeah,
And
definitely. There's
it definitely doesn't scare me off. It kind of is like one of these things where I'm like, wow, I actually think I can do that. And I'm actually excited to play it. And I'm going to play it just like Horizon, where I don't. Is there fast traveling in that game?
yes, yeah.
Yeah. See, so I might just like not fast travel, because I think that when these worlds are built so well, seeing it and like taking in their beauty is like totally one of the biggest parts of the game. It's so amazing. Amazing how these games are looking and how the exploration is just there for the world to exist, and it's so lived in. It
You're
feels good, so I'm
y-
gonna probably do that.
no, you will absolutely want to fast travel in this game. I
Oh, really?
basically guarantee it. There's to get to some areas. This game isn't afraid of. I think I mentioned it last time. This game isn't afraid of like hiding entire massive side areas, like in the most ridiculous places where you have to like either like find a hidden wall that doesn't actually exist, or find like an elevator tucked in a corner, or you have to do like a platforming challenge that doesn't even look like it's intended to get to different locations. Like this game will really, really hide stuff to the level where, like, to run, like, you wouldn't be able to just get on your horse and go everywhere sort of seamlessly. Like, you'd want to be able to fast travel, because it feels like there's certain locations where to get to like the first bonfire or Shrine of Grace, to get there, it feels like you've been through a challenge and you've been through like a journey in itself that feels really good. But in terms of after you've done it once, you're not going to want to do it over and over again. And also, whenever you rest or die, all the enemies respawn as well. So a lot of the time, this game feels like you're fighting to get from one essentially checkpoint to the next, really.
Oh, yeah.
So
So that actually makes a lot of sense. So I probably will fast travel, and I do
yeah,
fast travel on Horizon too. But it's different, especially because I didn't even think about like this isn't something where I can just like be exploring the open world and then I might get just fucked up by an enemy or something like.
It's not like, it's not like a traditional open world in that sense, or at least, it's not like Far Cry where it's like, you just drive around the whole map or whatever. Like it the way the game separates different zones is, it would be possible to do it again, like to do everything with no fast travel, but it would definitely be like a challenge run in terms of what you'd be putting yourself through, because basically every time you want to return to an area, you'd be essentially redoing like that level, essentially, if you want to think about it in that way.
Do you think I'll be missing a part of the experience by not experiencing like during the hype of the game? Because I'm gonna
Maybe.
probably play it in summer.
I was going to say that something I've really enjoyed about this game is, not when I played it, and to be fair, people, like, as soon as this game came out, right, like some people in the press had it for like a week. So people had already done a lot of stuff in the game, but by the time the game even came out, and then also as soon as the game came out, some streamers and some players will have just like played for like 24 hours straight and just played like a ridiculous amount of hours a day and uncovered stuff. But it has been cool to play while like not all the secrets have been uncovered, and it feels like you can still look for stuff yourself. And it's been good to talk to, like, I know a lot of people playing the game in terms of personal friends, in terms of streamers, in terms of people in Discord communities who are experiencing it now. And it has been sort of a great joy to talk to people and hear their experiences of like, oh, I discovered this and I did that and I fought this guy and I lost everything, but then I got this thing and it was super powerful and it helped, like all of those experiences unique to each player as all of us are progressing through the game sort of collectively. I think that is part of what has made this so strong. So I do think maybe you're slightly missing out in that sense, but I think you can still experience the game fresh and outside of the bubble around the game, and in a way that's also a good thing. Like, I found it kind of annoying in some respects that everywhere I look, everyone's talking about this game and uploading YouTube videos and streaming the game, because for the streams I've been watching, I've been only watching streams of people who are earlier in the game than me, because I don't want to like watch someone beat the game before I do, or like go to an area I've never seen and see all the sort of have all the surprises ruined. But that's been itself difficult because of just the amount of stuff going on about this game. Whereas in a quieter environment, you're not going to be sort of bombarded with all this sort of overwhelming information and content about the game all at once. So I think that's actually a positive in that sense, but probably more negative than positive overall in terms of not experiencing it with everyone else. But I don't think it will sort of substantially ruin or take away from the experience. I think I've got like one criticism of the game that I'm not even sure is a criticism. So everything mostly incredibly positive as before, but I'm not sure if there's like a perfect order to do things in this game to make the challenge level feel consistent, because I like the Soulsborne games, and first of all, I don't like feeling overpowered in these games, and you can have that happen. I think these games do a really good job of like, even the introductory enemies, even if you come back, they could still possibly kill you. Like, they still seem quite threatening to some extent, but because of how big this game is, I think the range of levels and like the range of like upgrades that you get, because the game is so much bigger than a Dark Souls game, if you end up going back to an earlier dungeon, or like you miss an earlier dungeon and you go back to it and you're like level 150, like you're just going to steamroll everything and you're not even going to really engage with the mechanics or like the combat, because you're just going to walk in and just like kill everything in one hit. So that in itself isn't a problem. I think it makes sense, but the problem I have is that I feel like there's a difficulty spike early game that's really good, And I think it's intended as like a you'll die here and then you should go back and like explore stuff and improve yourself. And I think that sort of teaches you a lesson through gameplay, which I really like. And then there's another difficulty spike in the mid game that does a similar thing. It's kind of like a check that you've got everything where it should be at that point. And then the end game is also really difficult in again a good way that makes sense as like an ultimate test of everything you've gone through. But there's a section in what I would describe as the early mid game, so before that mid game, but after the early game difficulty spike, where things feel a bit too easy. But I think for that section, I think it's fine because I think again, it's like teaching you about the freedom of exploring the world and sort of teaching you about if things are too hard in some sections, come back, come somewhere else, and there's tons of different content for you to do. So I think that works quite well, actually. But then there's like a mid late section, so after that mid game difficulty spike, but before the end game, that section is maybe where I have the problem because I feel like it was for me a lot easier than the mid game like difficulty spike. So much so that it sort of felt trivial and it felt like I'd done it in the wrong order. And so part of me is like, did I do it in the wrong order? Because that's possible, because the game is so open. So that might be my fault in a way. Or is it that you could do either of these areas in like whatever order? Because the original Dark Souls has stuff like that where after you get the Lord Vessel about halfway through the game, you can go to these 4 late game areas, but you can do them in whatever order you want. And so what you'll usually do is do like the easiest, the one that you sort of subjectively find easiest first. So then you get more powerful from doing that. And then the areas that you like least of those final 4 areas you can tackle last. So you sort of all 4 of them are scaled to be like the same difficulty, but you as a player, based on your own strengths and weaknesses and what you find easy and difficult, get to choose what you do, which I think works quite well. And so is that a situation here where those like 3 areas that sort of feel like they could be too easy, maybe I should have done them in the other order, and it was just that I chose sort of the bad one to do first for my particular character? So that's possible. Or is it just not sort of balanced properly, is the other possibility. Like, is it just not scaled in a way that makes sense? And then the other thing I'd say is another caveat. So this is, a criticism I have, but as I'm saying it, I'm like, I don't fully know if it's a criticism yet because I haven't played the game enough times to basically say anything sort of authoritative about it. In terms of the other thing that gives me pause is that I said earlier, I'm trying to do everything in this game. I'm trying to find everything. I'm trying to fight every boss. I'm trying to do every NPC quest. Most players won't do that. And when you're making a game like this, you don't want the expectation to be that all of your players are going to be completionists. Because then for, the more mainstream crowd or just someone who isn't that into the side stuff, the game still has to be beatable for those people and accessible for those people. So part of it makes me think maybe it's the fact that I've gone and done absolutely everything that I can find. And so that's given me a lot of really good equipment, really good upgrade materials, really good amount of runes to level up my character. So maybe it's just like, well, since I'm on the top end of that, it's maybe made me slightly overleveled. Whereas when I replay the game, I probably won't want to do everything because there's some dungeons where the reward you get is for very specific types of characters or very specific builds where it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to use that thing, and I remember that place gives you that thing, so I'm just not going to do that. And that in itself will make me level up less, and so that might make those areas feel better and more in line with where I want to be. And so then the game design intention might be that you don't do everything, that you just do what makes sense for your character and for what you're building towards. And then maybe those areas where I feel like they're too easy, then they feel sufficiently difficult. So it's like a really complicated problem, I guess, in terms of how I feel about it and whether I feel it's an actual problem or not. And it probably sort of evaluates how challenging it is to make a game like this be so open and free for players, because it got me thinking about how you could actually go to a fairly late game area pretty early, which I think is awesome. I love stuff like that. But then I was sort of thinking like, oh, what if you went there by accident somehow? Or like you went there early and then you didn't give up against like a boss there, and you just fought them like over and over and over and over again. And then you defeated them, and then they gave you a ton of runes to level up your character. And then you leveled up your character like 50 times. And then you went back to the starting game area and you were like, oh, this game sucks because everything's too easy. Like, and then you sort of have like a thing of like, is that the player's fault? Is that the design of the game? You know, how do you come to terms with that? And then thinking about that further is how well this game signposts to the player where you should be and where you shouldn't be, and how well it sort of scales the levels that you get and all of that stuff, with how it's sort of deceptively open, I would say, in a way, because in terms of the side content, I've noticed people tend to do stuff in radically different orders, and people miss a lot of stuff, and other people find stuff and find like weird quirks about the order that they did stuff. But then for the main game content, it seems that pretty much everyone does the stuff in the same order, which is really fantastic that they've sort of made a game so open, but through gameplay and through intuition, a player figures out where they feel they need to be and sort of is able to get through the world in a way that makes sense for them, and the way the game is designed fits in with that like perfectly, in a sense. So I think that's really strong and something I've noticed about the game. And so I really can't like it. It's something I'm genuinely struggling with, whether it's like a design flaw in the game or if it's like the best way it can possibly be made. And it's really interesting to see this kind of discourse and this kind of like critique of the game. I see it a lot on Twitter and in Discord, and I'm sure countless people eventually are going to make video essays about this game with how it's designed in that sense. And it's just such a good game to play and to think about and to talk about. And I'm really close to being done with it. I think I've got like 5 bosses left, maybe. I think, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm still not sure, and I'm like right at the end of the game, which is really awkward because I don't want to pass like a point of no return too early. But I'm pretty sure from what I've heard from people that I'm really close now, and it feels like I'm close. You know, when you play a game and you're like you've like fully explored the map and you've fully explored like everything you can, and then you get to like an area and it's like, okay, so even like the art design and the music is signaling to me that this is a late game area. Like the level design, the art design, the enemy HP, the fact that my weapons are like completely upgraded and can't get upgraded further. Like there's a lot of signals to me like, oh, okay, this is the end. And again, that's it goes into how well this game signposts stuff to the extent where you feel like you can play this game blind and still discover a lot of stuff and not screw yourself over. And it's like, I wonder how they tune that and how they balance that, and whether the game goes through like extensive playtesting, maybe more than a linear game would, or more than another type of open world game would. Because other open world games, what makes this game so enthralling, partly, is other open world games like Borderlands, like I think The Division, like open world RPG type games, where sort of looser shootery games as well, where you get to an area. If you get to a later game area too early, the enemies will just be like 3 levels higher, and then they'll have like a skull icon, and you just can't kill them. Basically, like you'll just do like 3 damage with every shot or with every hit. and this game refuses to do that, and so it makes it more difficult to keep the player on the golden path, but it also makes the game feel less cheap and more well realized. But it must be like so much work to make a world that doesn't do that. And it's similar for like, and then you look at other open world stuff on the other end of the spectrum, stuff like Skyrim and Fallout, where they'll sort of half do what Elden Ring does in terms of its world design and how it levels its enemies and challenges, but it will also scale enemies with your character as well. So when you level up your character, the enemies level up as well. And when you're low level, even in like late game areas, the enemies tend to be lower level and stuff like that. Like it will, behind the scenes, it will scale the enemy encounters so that they are based on where you're at in the game rather than the location of the world that you're at to some extent. There's exceptions definitely for that. So that's sort of like a middle ground between what Elden Ring does and what something like Borderlands or The Division will do. And all of that is just really interesting to me to think about how they manage to give people such a broad variety of experiences without the whole thing falling apart and completely breaking.
I'm curious if other games are going to try to copy this and then just completely fall apart and break, just like you just said.
Yeah, I think they will, honestly. I think that, yeah, I'm quite pessimistic in terms of I think people will learn the wrong lessons from this game in a variety of ways. And it's so intricately made as well. There's some stuff, this isn't even, like, this isn't a compliment as well, but this game is very From Software in terms of how it's built up as well. And it's pretty unfair and unrealistic to expect other developers to be able to do it because a lot of the enemies in this game clearly build upon what FromSoft have done in previous games to the extent where there's like an enemy type in this game that is basically just the Asylum Demon from the original Dark Souls. Like in terms of moveset, is basically almost exactly the same as a boss from a previous game. And there's some other stuff in this game where like the status effects and outright like some enemies are literally like exactly lifted from previous games. So this is a game where it's like a lot of people, a lot of reviewers and a lot of pundits have said this game's like a greatest hits collection for From Software, and I can definitely see that and agree with it in the sense that FromSoft have had an advantage in that they've built all of this stuff before, or a lot of this stuff before. They've just sort of adapted it and added new stuff on top of it. So this wasn't a game that was built completely from scratch from like a new developer that had no experience or wanted to get into this genre. Like this has been made by a team that essentially defined the Soulsborne genre. I mean, obviously defined the Soulsborne genre, but then went to sort of try to redefine the open world genre. So they've already had years of experience and they've already built up a lot of these systems that have gone into these games. They've built them up, they've refined them, they've listened to criticism, they've changed them over time. So even though it's a new IP and it's a fresh take on like an open world, it's still built from foundations that have been long established and taken a long time to build up. So it's in itself, it feels unfair to expect other developers to do the same thing or to do a similar thing because it's like this team has had like decades of experience building up to this. So you know, it's or 1 decade of experience, I guess, of experience to build up to it.
And is that your only game?
Yes, that's it. I think, God, it's going to be so difficult after I finish this game to know what to play next.
Yes.
It's always the case with a game that's over 100 hours long, and it's even worse when it's a game that you think is amazing as well. Because you just feel like, I mean, people have said it about open world games, but it's like, it's going to be too. I definitely can't go into like Far Cry 6 after this. Like, I can't go into like another like open world game, and not to say that Far Cry 6 is a bad game, of course, but
Right.
just the idea of like you play something that feels somewhat revolutionary, it can be quite hard to go back to something that is in a similar genre or the same genre, but has a more sort of
Traditional game
traditional
design.
take that you've
Yeah.
seen hundreds of times before. And we sort of talked about that last time, that it can be tough to do that, and it can be tough to commit to that, I think, because when something that you play or watch, this is true for films and TV shows as well, when it changes the way you think about something and it surprises you every few hours, it's really hard. You know that you sort of, your brain wants to keep chasing that high, like that exact same high, and nothing will fill in that gap quite like that thing that you just experienced it does. So you sort of have to, I guess the best thing to do is to sort of look for something that does a similar thing but does it in a different genre. I think going to a far away genre might be the best thing for me to do. So, you know, play like a platformer or like a rhythm game or a real time strategy game or something where it's like you're switching your brain into like a completely different gear that's several genres away that isn't really even close to what you just experienced. I think that will probably be the best move.
I think you're right. But let's talk about the trophy and achievement of the week. What is your achievement of the week?
My achievement of the week is it's called Iron Man, and it's from Spelunky. I figured shout out Spelunky because it's a great game, and I need to play Spelunky 2, and so I might play Spelunky 2 after Elden Ring, perhaps because it does fit into being something totally different. It's a roguelike, it's a dungeon crawler sort of platformer game. I don't know if I'd describe it as dungeon crawler. I feel like actually that means different things to different people. I mean it in terms of like the procedural generation, and you're literally like in a mine shaft, not as in like an action RPG type combat stuff. But anyway, the achievement Iron Man is to complete the game without using any shortcuts. And it made me think, I really like when games have easier options and accessibility options, but then also give you tangible rewards for playing the game from start to finish with no sort of extra skips or extra cheats or anything like that. And then Spelunky does a really good job of doing that in terms of this achievement for beating the game from front to back without dying, without using shortcuts. But then it also does a good job in terms of having speedrun achievements as well, and achievements to complete the game without picking up any gold and things like that. So it's got like the traditional, like, you beat the game in the way it's probably intended for most players, and then it's also got these like extra ones above that, and then it's also got an achievement for beating the game with using shortcuts as well. So, you know, and you'll unlock that achievement with the Iron Man achievement if you do it the Iron Man mode. Like both achievements will stack in, but they also give you an achievement for beating the game in any sense. So I always like when developers are really considerate of that kind of stuff with how people like to play the game and how also people like to challenge themselves with beating game with different requirements for each.
Yeah. For mine, I'm going to choose something from MLB 21, the show, or the MLB the Show 21. And that's last year's MLB game, as we talked about. The new trophy list for 22 hasn't come out yet, but it will be out soon. And I wanted to pick mowing them down because I love watching pitching. It's one of my favorite things about baseball. It's crazy how these people can throw 99 miles an hour and then like they can also throw like 80 miles an hour, but the pitch moves like fucking crazy. And there's a trophy that's called mowing them down, and it's strike out 6 batters or more within the first 3 innings. And the 3 innings is 9 outs. So you have to strike out 6 out of 9 batters, which is such a cool ass thing to do. And I think that's going to be a fun one for me to get. So I was like, that is actually a really, really fun trophy and I'm, like I said, I'm obsessed with baseball. So I wanted to highlight a good baseball trophy. That's a good one. Any final thoughts, AJ?
Yeah, it was good talking about the Batman as well, and all the games we've been playing are awesome at the moment, and things are going to heat up again. It feels like I've been saying that a lot lately because tons of stuff has just been coming out this year already. But I was looking at the list of upcoming releases, and on Xbox, that like Zelda-like game Tunic is coming, and then there's also Ghostwire Tokyo on PS5. There's they announced the state of play for Hogwarts Legacy. Hopefully, that comes out this year. And then there's stuff like Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. There's MLB The Show. There's just so much stuff that's like impossible to keep up with.
Yeah, it's crazy out there, which is great, especially when the world needs it right now. Like, we need entertainment to kind of distract us from the horrible shit that's happening, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for the the war and the pestilence and everything.
Absolutely. Everything sucks. And I think that it's great that we have some entertainment. It sucks that some of the studios over there in Ukraine just had to relocate, and it sucks. It all sucks, but it's nice to have something to play.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad. Like Stalker 2 was supposed to come out in February, I think, maybe, and then it got delayed until December, and then like immediately after the delay, Russia invaded Ukraine. So then they were like, the game's like indefinitely delayed, which makes sense. Obviously, like they need to look after themselves and take refuge wherever they can.
Absolutely.
But it's obviously a really sad situation for them, and there should be no pressure on that, because you worry as well that like those devs are going to get like a bunch of hate. Like people are going to be like, "Oh, you promised, this, and this," and it's like it's good that like we said that so much stuff is coming out as well to sort of to have access to. That's not like, there shouldn't be any pressure on those studios in that region to like output stuff at times like this. Like video games, they're just entertainment, right? It's not life or death or anything, and it definitely shouldn't be a life or death like development situation.
Yeah, so. No kidding. And like, I can't imagine how insensitive you have to be mad about a game being delayed because you were fucking invaded.
Well, yeah, I mean, the problem for that game, right, is that because it's like an Xbox timed exclusive, it becomes part of like the console wars, right? Like it escalates in terms of the discourse online, because a bunch of like really sad Xbox fanboys are like, you promised this banger exclusive, right? Like where is it? And then you've got like the PS fanboy annoying people who are like, heh, another Xbox game is gone, haha, like those people, right? And so those people all antagonize each other, and the idiots all argue with each other about it, and then that sort of gets blowback to the developers. And so it's just there's a lot of stupidity out there in terms of all that stuff.
Yeah, but that's gonna end the episode for today. I hope everyone out there stays safe, and happy hunting. Peace out.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to Complete Edition. If you like the content, consider supporting us on patreon.com/completion club. If you have any questions or would like to reach us, email completionclub@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to Complete Edition.